So Politico, as we know, they got their U.S. aid funding cut after it was exposed that they had received millions of dollars in taxpayer money from USAID. As it turns out, Politico has changed their tone a little bit. Here's an article we got from Politico that came out this week, and it is the funniest thing I've read all week. It says voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong. So the publication that spent the last 4 years gaslighting us about how well the economy was doing, and it was just your fault. You were to blame. You were being too picky. You were being too greedy. Everything was peachy. It was your fault. Here's what they had to say. Said before the presidential election, many Democrats were puzzled by the seeming disconnect between economic reality, quote unquote, as reflected in various government statistics and the public's perceptions of the economy on the ground. Oh, yeah. What he means by this is that Democrats were perplexed because they could no longer lie to people about things that were right in front of their faces. It says, many in Washington bristled at the public's failure to register how strong the economy really was. I love how they're taking their medicine here. Like these pearl-clutching Washington elites in suits that ride around in limousines and Escalade convos. They can't comprehend why the plebs are so upset about the $19 orange juice. Said that they charged that right-wing echo chambers were conning voters into believing entirely preposterous narratives about America's decline. The right-wing echo chambers they're talking about were the grocery store produce aisles, by the way. That's the right-wing echo chamber. I knew Biden was fucked 2 years into his presidency because I was at the grocery store. Lady picks up hamburger meat, looks at the price, sets it down, and then mutters to herself, at least the fucking mean tweets are gone. I knew at that moment that Biden was cooked. Said what they rarely considered was whether something else might be responsible for the disconnect, whether, for instance, government statistics were fundamentally flawed or, as we said on the show, manipulated. The statistics are not what's flawed. It's the way they report them. It's the way they change the definition of the equation for inflation to compare it to 1 year rather than 2 years, which in turn cut it anywhere between 25 to 50%. So the inflation rates that you were seeing under the Biden administration, under the old calculation, were actually double. They just changed how they calculated it. It's the oldest trick in the book. They can't change the numbers, so they change the way they count the numbers. I wonder if they would do something like that with votes, huh? Crazy. Says whether, for instance, what if the numbers supporting the case for broad-based prosperity were themselves misrepresentations? What if, in fact, darker assessments of the economy were more authentically tethered to reality? So they go on and on here. It said these numbers have time and time suggested to many in Washington that unemployment is low, wages are growing for middle America, and that to a greater or lesser degree, economic growth is lifting all boats year upon year. But when traveling the country, I've encountered something very different. Cities that appear increasingly seedy. Regions, it's almost like how they lied about the crime statistics too, right? Regions that seem derelict. Driving into the office each day in Washington, I noticed a homeless encampment fixed outside the Federal Reserve itself. Then I began to detect a second pattern inside and outside D.C. alike. Democrats, on the whole, seemed much more inclined to believe that the economic indicators reported. Republicans, by contrast, seemed more inclined to believe what they were seeing with their own two eyes. Right. So so basically what you're saying is Democrats believe what they hear, Republicans believe what they can see. That's what you're saying here. So they're basically insulting their own base with this article. They're saying that the Democrats, despite going to the same grocery stores and paying the same price, well, probably more because they're going to Whole Foods. Maybe that was the problem, was the Democrats just assume groceries are expensive because they only go to Whole Foods, right? But so the Democrats, what they're essentially saying here is that the liberals who went to the same grocery stores and paid the same prices for the same stuff as Republicans were refusing to, it wasn't registering with them how expensive these items were, because they were reading reports from their trusted sources. This is the problem with the appeal to authority fallacy. They were reading reports from the so-called science, from the mainstream media and the politicians that they trusted, whereas Republicans were just going, yeah, no, that's higher. You're full of shit. You can't lie to me. One side bought the lies, the other didn't. It's a flip-flop reversal of the weapons of mass destruction. Said within the nation's capital, the gap in perception has had profound implications for decades. A small cohort of federal agencies have reported many of the same economic statistics using fundamentally the same methodology, relying on the same sources at the same appointed times. Rarely has anyone ever asked whether the figures they release hew to reality. Given my newfound skepticism, I decided several years ago to gather a team of researchers under the rubric. Yeah, so it says what we uncovered shocked us. The bottom line is that for 20 years or more, including the months prior to the election, voter perception was more reflective of reality than the incumbent statistics. Our research revealed that data collected by various agencies is largely accurate. Moreover, the people staffing those agencies are talented and well-intentioned, but the filters used to compute the headline statistics are flawed. As a result, they paint a much rosier picture of reality than bears out to the ground. Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing for you. You guys can go. It's on Politico. I'll share it in the That Space with Caleb Salvatore Facebook group, so you can go read the whole thing for yourself. But this is what we said. The numbers themselves don't lie. The humans who interpret the numbers are the ones who are lying. Right? For instance, we always do sporting statistics here. I'll make a real simple football analogy. My team scored 42 points this week. I'm such a great coach. I deserve a raise. What I'm not telling you is that the other team scored 52 points and we lost the game. It's really that simple. That's how the Biden administration calculated statistics like inflation, like job growth, like wage growth, et cetera, over the last couple years. It doesn't matter what the numbers say. If you get someone who's smart enough and good enough at their job, they can manipulate them to tell any story they want. And we saw that over the last 4 years. The difference is alternative media was available and people stopped buying the line of bullshit they had been fed. The very expensive line of bullshit they had been fed, as it turned out. They quit believing it. There were other sources out there because for the longest time, if the mainstream media and the White House and all your friends were telling you, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Here's what the statistics say. You would feel like an idiot if you tried to go against the grain. Some people still did, and thank God for those people, but you would feel like an idiot. But now that the game has changed and that we have all these alternative media sources, like That Space with Caleb Salvatore, now that the game has changed, those people have a support system. Hey, no, I'm not dumb. I'm not crazy. This is a real problem. They're breaking down the numbers that aren't being shown, and the way that the numbers that are being shown are being manipulated to use against me. Here's the proof. And then they can break the brains of their science-worshiping friends, their establishment and, appeal to authority fallacy friends. That's all there is to it. Alternative media's changed the game. So like the drunks say, keep coming back, it works. I'm your host, Caleb Salvatore. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you on Monday. Unsolicited advice will make a return. Mia, do you have any closing comments you would like to make to the good people before we peace out of here?
No.
Okay. Well, cheat on your taxes, not your spouse, and stay based.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to click the link in the description to get the full episode on Rumble. If you prefer to listen along, you could actually get us on Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. You can also go to www.outlawstreamers.com to learn more about not just my show, but tons of other great shows and all the exciting projects they have coming up. Follow my socials at Caleb Isn't Funny on Twitter and Instagram, at Caleb Salvatore Comedy on the Chinese Spy app that is TikTok, and be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks, and we'll see you every Saturday for brand new episodes of That's Based. Peace.